Hello, and welcome all to Movie Hunter, the show that tracks down the quality of all sorts of movies. My name is Hunter, and today in the 59th episode, our target is Labyrinth, produced by Henson Associates and Lucasfilm Ltd. And distributed by TriStar Pictures and Columbia EMI Warner Distributors. Following their collaboration on The Dark Crystal, Brian Froud and Jim Henson discussed working together on another project. Froud suggested doing something with goblins, with the traditional stories of goblins stealing babies providing the basis of the film. Coming off of The Dark Crystal, Jim Henson wanted to do something lighter, with more of a sense of comedy, with his previous film being a lot darker. In March of 1983, Henson held a meeting with Froud as well as Dennis Lee, a famous children's author, who was tasked with writing a novella that a screenplay could be written from. Henson then talked with another writer, Terry Jones, about writing the screenplay, because Henson's daughter Lisa had just finished reading his book, Eric the Viking, and suggested that Henson should try to get him to be the screenwriter. Terry Jones received Dennis Lee's novella, but Jones used very little, if any, of it, finding much more inspiration out of Brian Froud's drawings. Even though Jones is credited as the sole screenwriter, it was much more of a collaborative effort between himself, Jim Henson, George Lucas, Laura Phillips, and Elaine May, with Jones stating that the final product didn't feel like it was very much his. The script and screenplay were changed multiple times for various different reasons, ultimately undergoing at least 25 treatments between 1983 and 1985, with the shooting script being ready very shortly before filming began. The actor for the primary villain was David Bowie, but other musicians were also considered, such as Sting, Prince, Mick Jagger, and Michael Jackson. Many puppeteers from Henson's other works, such as Sesame Street and Fraggle Rock, were brought onto this project as well. It took 5 months to shoot Labyrinth, which was very complicated to shoot due to various puppets, animatronics, and things of that sort being constantly used. The nearly hour-long documentary, Inside the Labyrinth, explains the rigorous process of getting everything together. The film has received numerous prequels and sequels in various other forms, such as an English-language manga sequel titled Return to Labyrinth. The film released on June 27, 1986 in the United States and on December 2, 1986 in the United Kingdom. The budget was $25 million, but only made $12.9 million in the United States. However, it was a success in the United Kingdom and overseas, making $34 million in total. It was directed by Jim Henson with a screenplay by Terry Jones, and the story by Dennis Lee and Jim Henson. It was produced by Eric Rattray, and the cinematographer was Alex Thompson. The music was by Trevor Jones, and it was edited by John Grover. The cast includes David Bowie, Jennifer Connelly, Toby Froud, Shelley Thompson, and Christopher Malcolm. The puppeteers include Brian Henson, Shari Weiser, Ron Muick, Rob Mills, David Goles, David Barclay, Karen Prow, Frank Oz, Steve Whitmire, and Kevin Clash. The film includes the voices of Brian Henson, Ron Muick, David Shaughnessy, Timothy Bateson, Michael Horden, Denise Breyer, and Percy Edwards. The film takes inspiration from Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz, and Grimm's Fairy Tales, all of which are books that can be seen in the opening of the film. The story follows Sarah, who, much to her annoyance, must babysit her infant half-brother Toby while her father and stepmother go out. Frustrated by his endless whining, Sarah wishes for the goblins from her upcoming play to take him away. When Toby actually disappears, the Goblin King, named Jareth, appears and offers Sarah her dreams in return for Toby, but Sarah declines, immediately regretting her wish. Jareth gives her 13 hours to solve his labyrinth, otherwise Toby will be turned into a goblin and stay with him forever. Transported to the start of the labyrinth, Sarah runs into a dwarf named Hoggle, who helps to get her inside. Sarah falls down an oblite, which immediately reunites her with Hoggle, who she makes a deal with. In return for a bracelet, Hoggle will take her as close to the center of the labyrinth as he can. Further along, they encounter a large and hairy troll named Ludo, being attacked by goblins. Hoggle flees, but Sarah is able to help the kindly giant, and the two team up. Meanwhile, Hoggle is cornered by Jareth, questioning his loyalty given that the original plan was for Hoggle to take Sarah to the beginning of the labyrinth. Frightened of the Goblin King, Hoggle agrees to give Sarah an enchanted peach. Ludo accidentally falls down a trapdoor, separating him from Sarah, who encounters some strange creatures called the Fire Gang, but is saved by Hoggle. The two then find themselves in the Bog of Eternal Stench, where they once again meet up with Ludo. They then come to a bridge that leads out, but are stopped by a fox-like creature with an eye patch and a sword, named Sir Didymus, as well as his steed, an Old English sheepdog named Ambrosius. When Ludo bests him in combat, they join the group and aid them in leaving the bog. Hoggle then gives Sarah the peach, putting her in a dream, and Hoggle runs away. Sarah wakes up and reunites with the group. At a gate, the group is encountered by a large robotic guard, but Hoggle comes rushing back and is able to defeat it, and is then forgiven by everyone. The group, now whole again, enters the city at the center of the labyrinth, where they are attacked by Jareth's goblins. They are able to escape thanks to Ludo's ability to summon rocks, and they enter the castle, with Sarah insisting that she must face Jareth alone, and the group tells her to call them if she should need them. In a room with strange staircases everywhere, she faces Jareth and attempts to grab Toby. Sarah then recites the last line of her upcoming play, The Labyrinth, which she failed to remember in the beginning of the film, defeating Jareth in the process, who turns into a barn owl and flies away. Toby is returned to Sarah, and they both wake up to being back at the house, with Sarah a lot less annoyed at Toby. She then tells her friends that she still needs them, and they all appear in her room and have a party. Let's start by talking about the music in the movie. You might be surprised to learn, just as I was, that this movie is a musical, though in retrospect I shouldn't have been that surprised given that David Bowie plays the central villain. But yes, in this already confusing film, we've got some confusing songs to go along with it, so let's start with that. If you're unfamiliar with how I talk about music around here, since I'm not very musically educated, I just rank the songs from worst to best, to give a good overview of the songs in the film, and what the average ratio of good to bad is with them. I should preface this with the fact that I'm quite unfamiliar with David Bowie before making this review, and even now I'm still quite unknowledgeable. If this film is anything to go by, his songs aren't exactly the type of songs that I listen to, but I will say that the songs I did like here, I did actually really like. Unfortunately, these bottom two songs I really don't care for. In fifth place, we have As the World Falls Down, which plays when Sarah eats the enchanted peach and hallucinates. It is an extremely bizarre scene that I really don't care for, and shows a very strange relationship between Sarah and Jareth that was never shown before. The song itself also isn't anything I really got anything out of, but what really drags it down is just the strangeness of this scene. Very unpleasant, and the film would have been better without it, in my opinion. In fourth place, Within You, which is similarly very strange, and unfortunately so, because it plays during the final confrontation between Sarah and Jareth. The song is once again pretty unmemorable, but at least the scene is pretty cool, with Sarah, Jareth, and Toby all venturing around the confusing staircase room. But yeah, not a whole lot to say with this one. In third place, we've got Underground, which plays during the opening and ending credits. Quite a fun song, actually. The chorus is the best part, but the whole song has a nice rhythm to it that makes it a neat listen. In second place, Chilly Down, which is the only song not sung by Jareth, but instead by the Fire Gang, a weird group of bird creatures who are able to detach their limbs. Once again, the chorus kind of carries this one, with a lot of the song being filled with random shenanigans by the Fire Gang, but that chorus is really fun. And in first place, Magic Dance, which is way too catchy. Everything about it works really well, with the only exception being that the song is momentarily interrupted by Sarah in the labyrinth, but even then, it was a relatively brief interruption. The song has a really catchy and fun tune to it that gives off Muppet vibes for sure, but also being unique enough for it to be sort of hard to see as a Muppet song. Really fun one, and absolutely deserving of the best song in the film. Overall, the songs range from very strange to very strange but with a catchy tune. The lowest two I definitely would have preferred to see cut, but the other three are all good, in their own strange and unique way. I was pretty surprised by how much I did actually end up liking the songs, given that the film was strange enough without them. Speaking of which, let's now talk about the main characters of the film, mainly Sarah, but also the group that she picks up along the way and travels with. Firstly, Sarah, I initially found to be a decently annoying character. She was very easily bothered by her family, especially her infant brother Toby, which made for an unlikable character given how easily she was provoked. Wishing that her brother would get stolen by the goblins from her play, on top of just being an outright strange thing to say, was also an extremely selfish and thoughtless one, as proven when she immediately comes to regret that decision. Luckily, after that, she becomes a lot more likable, and not nearly as annoying. She is a rather static character, I will say, though, as I really don't think she learns anything, and as her immediate realization that she was wrong just sort of makes her an Alice or a Dorothy-like character for us to experience this wacky world through. Not a bad character necessarily, except in the beginning, but nothing incredibly special either. Hoggle is the first creature Sarah encounters, and he's fine enough. I like his arc where he's constantly being pulled between his friendship with Sarah and his fear of Jareth. It is done a little bit generically and predictably, with his apology being a bit too perfect, if that makes any sense. Like, he apologizes all shy-like, then everyone immediately forgives him, and he's all surprised that they did forgive him, and it's all just very by the numbers. Still, though, his character has enough charm to make it all very likable by the end. Ludo is a pretty fun character. He's the typical gentle giant character, but this time he's a puppet. And not only that, he also has the ability to summon rocks. Why he can do that, I have no idea. But it's super cool, and he's a pretty cool character, even if I couldn't really tell you why. He just is. Sir Didymus is a pretty fun inclusion too, with him reminding me a lot of Puss in Boots from the Shrek franchise, but way more confident and way less competent. I like his steed too, which is hilariously just a dog. Not even a puppet dog, it's just an actual dog named Ambrosius. These two make for a really fun duo to have along for the ride. Overall, these characters are all pretty fun. Them constantly getting separated keeps things interesting, and the same goes for the other minor characters that they meet throughout the various parts of the labyrinth. The ending of the film is quite strange, with Sarah saying that she still needs them, and so they all just randomly appear for a random ending dance party. But with this film, that's actually pretty par for the course. Though this goes beyond just these characters, the ambiguity of whether or not the labyrinth world is real, or just from Sarah's play, or just Sarah's imagination, really muddies the water even more. Still though, all in all fun characters that are each pretty unique, and there's not really a clear favorite among them. Now, let's talk about the main villain of the film, Jareth, the Goblin King, as well as the labyrinth itself. Jareth is a weird villain to talk about. Story-wise, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense, much like the film itself. Why is the Goblin King not a goblin when all the other goblins are? Why is the Goblin King David Bowie? Why is David Bowie not called the Goblin King, but instead his name is Jareth? The Goblin King is an objectively cooler sounding name, right? On top of that, he does want Toby. On top of that, why does he want Toby so bad? Like, what does he have to gain from that? He says that he's going to turn him into a goblin, but like, does that imply that all the other goblins are babies too? That's really messed up if so, and really tonally off from the rest of the film. Last thing, Sarah defeating Jareth is easily the most confusing thing in the film. She reads the last line of her play that she was struggling to remember in the beginning of the film, which apparently defeats him. Wikipedia says that Jareth's power comes from Sarah fearing him, but not only is that never explained, but Sarah never really seemed afraid of Jareth, with sequences like the ballroom hallucination implying something even more different. From a story perspective, Jareth does not make sense in the slightest bit. and even attempts at explaining it are either not told to us in any manner or simply do not clear anything up. However, Jareth is an entertaining villain. With a great performance by David Bowie and a couple of catchy songs, his character is pretty entertaining and fun to watch. His labyrinth is likewise very charming. There are a lot of really fun creatures and characters contained within, and set pieces that lead to some fun sequences. I could go on and on about them, but at that point you might as well just watch the film yourself. A couple of standouts, though, were the hands that formed faces when they talked, and a funny guy with a bird hat. Also the worm. The worm is pretty funny. As for the locations, the Bog of Eternal Stench is something right out of The Princess Bride, and the Goblin City leads to a really entertaining sequence. Overall, this is a really entertaining, energetic, and engaging part of the movie, but is completely riddled with story-based issues. A lot of charm and ultimately good times, though. I give Labyrinth a 7 out of 10 for being a movie filled to the brim with creativity and charm. Based purely on that, the film would be a 10 out of 10. It's somewhat of a shame that, like The Dark Crystal, I really didn't love it as much as I would have liked to. Both are technical marvels, of course, and I'd still highly recommend both of them, but they also pair compared to every Muppet movie I've reviewed thus far. In the end, though, a fun film with a lot of strangeness and peculiarities, but a relic of its time for sure. Welp, that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to share any opinions you had on the movie. A new episode releases each week, so stay tuned to see which film I cover next. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.